Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a first-time MP, this has been quite the introduction into federal politics. I received a quick schooling on what is truly important to the people in my riding and how things work in this government environment, as well as the ways that I can contribute. After the initial post-election excitement, the reality of setting up an office in Ottawa and in the constituency set in, and we got to work putting together a team to serve the people of Fredericton and to represent Canadians. We spent 5 months following the election in a typical rhythm of Parliament before the pandemic took hold in our nation. We have now spent just as much time in the emergency public health, social, and economic relief efforts associated with COVID-19. As many of you know, I am a teacher by trade. Teaching is not the traditional path to politics, but there is nothing traditional about this Parliament for me. I spent a decade teaching youth to have a critical lens, to stand up for what they believe in, and to not accept injustice. I apply those lessons in my work here as an MP, and I am honored to be able to share it with my colleagues in this venue. Despite the change in career, I have kept my priorities and passions. I came here to create a better world for children and youth and the communities they grew up in. In today's Take Note debate, I want to talk about families, students, and some of the realities of this pandemic experience and the ways we can keep moving forward to get through this together. My family means everything to me, and they've been along for this intense journey. For us, the pandemic has meant months in intermittent isolation and a family bubble, days in the car to get here and back to New Brunswick, and only about 8 hours since March that I've been without my 2 children, except for the hours I've spent sitting in this house, which is perhaps why I have one of the best attendance records. If my colleagues didn't catch the humor in that, they can rest assured that I love my children and they love me, but we are just looking forward to our routines returning to normal. The point is, as a working mom, having no school or daycare these past months has been like maternity leave without the leave. Full-time work with child supervision and care is simply not possible, especially with the added responsibilities of homeschooling. I have heard from many parents of the struggles and concerns of parenting in pandemic. Parents in Canada need a break, especially parents of children with disabilities, autism, or behavioral challenges who need educational assistance, resource teachers, and guidance counselors. And children need a break from their parents, especially those experiencing perhaps neglect or abuse, and they have been on my mind these past few months. They need to hear from other adults, coaches, and role models. So let's take this time to sincerely appreciate our early childhood education and public school systems and the people that we rely on to make them work. En tant que gouvernement, nous devons nous engager.
Our government must commit to ensuring that students, teachers, and school employees feel safe as they return to school.
Families are stressed and apprehensive with a variety of tough choices ahead. I know there are innovative solutions, ideas out there, and I trust our government to assist provinces as they reopen schools with the clear and cautious health advice. I think also about the families separated by our border closure. Foreign national long-term partners and adult children remain unable to enter Canada to see their loved ones. These families have spent 5 months separated already. While enforcing 2-week quarantines, we could lighten travel restrictions for students and immediate family, enabling them to return to their Canadian families and communities. These changes, coupled with the reminder that Canada is home to people from all over the world, would go a long way to combat the isolationism that has been known to breed contempt, and that may already be directed at the international students trickling into our country. Deux campus universitaires et plus.
The city of Fredericton is home to 2 university campuses and many colleges.
Each year are a critical component of our local community, and having so few of them return to us in person this year is a major loss. The universities in my home province have been announcing pandemic protocols for the coming semester. There are a lot of pressures on these institutions, but I can't help but think of the impact on students. On top of the anxieties the last 5 months have brought for all of us, they are facing the choice of continuing to take on personal student debt at a time when it is not clear what sort of economy they will graduate into. We will need this government, and likely the next government to come, to stand beside these students as they work to pay off student debt incurred at this juncture in their lives. And speaking of student debt, we are coming up on the end of the government's initiative to pause student loan repayment obligations for recent graduates. This will mean hundreds of dollars monthly that these debt holders will need to begin paying again. This program should be extended for at least another 6 months. And we should start talking meaningfully about student debt forgiveness.
We must support families, and particularly children, teens, and young adults during these uncertain times.
The health emergency over the last months has been coupled with civil unrest and action. We have seen deaths in our streets, ongoing oppression and injustice. I think of the world that my children are inheriting. All children, that youth, students are inheriting across Canada. I look around, I watch the news, I read the comments on social media, which maybe I shouldn't, because they lead me to shake my head. Our kids will have questions on all of this, and we had better have decent answers for them. We must seize this opportunity and wield the responsibility we have as parliamentarians to address the prejudices that blind us. Rampant systemic racism, hiding the many microaggressions and overt acts of racism present in our everyday lives. Toxic masculinity that seeds silent acceptance for rape culture and violence against women and girls and members of the LGBTQIA2+ community. Privilege that shrinks our worldview, making invisible those living in poverty, in insecure housing, with disabilities, fighting addictions, and surviving trauma. We need to start seeing one another again and finding compassion for our neighbors. Since being elected as a member of Parliament, I have been actively involved in calls for equality and systemic change. Recently, and in light of international and local tragedies, I have supported a call for a National Senate inquiry into wellness checks as a police response to mental health issues in Canada. I attended a healing walk for Chantel Moore and Rodney Levi. I made a public pledge to call out racism when I see it online or otherwise. I signed a petition calling for a review of systemic racism in police forces. I submitted a letter to you, Mr. Speaker, to address systemic racism in this institution. I have questioned the Minister of Health about actions on their mandate to address racism in the healthcare system and asked the Public Safety Minister to declare his outrage and commit to protecting all Black, Indigenous, and people of color from racial injustice. These are the promises I made to my youth, the ones that I worked with, my students. I taught them to be activists. If we see something is wrong, we do something about it. If someone's voice can't be heard, we find ways to amplify it. As I prepare to send my kids back to school, I've been reflecting on the immense responsibility our teachers will shoulder this school year. They will balance public health protocols with school curricula and changing class composition. They too will face the questions of curious young minds about the world we live in. Their answers will be instrumental in shaping the minds of a coming generation of leaders. Les enseignantes et enseignants méritent un besoin.
Teachers deserve and need our support, our patience, and our encouragement.
Professionals have stepped up to respond to this pandemic. Our teachers are being called to step up now to do the important work of helping to raise children, to educate them, and to help them build resilience in the face of uncertainty. I thank them for their service, and I stand with Canadian families. To the young thinkers and learners across this country, I am listening. Your leadership is essential as we face down our challenges, and we will get through this together. Please reach out anytime. Thank you. Merci.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for North Okanagan, Smilkman Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to say thank you to the member across the way for her speech. Also, I find it interesting that she gave a little list of all the things that she's been up to, so it's always wonderful to hear different approaches. I have a specific question. She has mentioned, obviously, the importance of family, the importance of certainty, particularly during a pandemic. Earlier today, Mr. Speaker, I did ask the Minister of Employment multiple times, as I have over the past few months, over the issue about accessing parental benefits. And I just want to find out from this member, is she hearing this from her own constituents where mothers, fathers are unable to know where they stand? I had talked to one woman who was 8 hours short of meeting the requirements for eligibility to receive parental benefits from employment insurance. And the minister has been given the powers under C-13 with the stroke of a pen to deal with it. Is she facing the same circumstances in her riding? Does she support dealing with this as quickly as possible and treating this with the urgency that's necessary? Having a baby during a pandemic is the worst, is bad enough, Mr. Speaker. Trying to figure out where you stand with employment insurance with that uncertainty, I think is unconscionable.
The Honourable Member for Fredericton.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank so much to my honourable colleague for that very important question. And absolutely, I've been hearing from my constituents on this same issue of parental and maternity benefits as a result of COVID. And there's a group that has gathered. There are parents across this country that are grappling with this question. And when we had our daily or almost daily briefing calls with various government departments, I consistently asked that question day in and day out. And I was given that same response that we're working on it, we're looking for the solution. So for me, this delay is quite disappointing. These people have been waiting. Some have already had their children and are already needing to receive this benefit. So I was pleased to hear the minister this morning talk about retroactive pay, but that doesn't get you what you need in the interim. So I'm very concerned with how long this has taken, but also encouraged to see that finally we might see some action on this. So here we are 5 months into the pandemic, and these parents have been waiting. So let's get money into the hands of parents now, and certainly the retroactive payment is good to hear, but it is an issue that went on for far too long. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my honourable colleague for the extraordinary speech. I've seen speeches that are good. I've seen speeches that are great. I've seen a lot of hand sock puppets speaking whatever their leaders tell them to. And for all the sham and drudgery in this place, the only thing that makes it extraordinary is members who actually come here and want to make change, because that's why we should be here as change makers. I want to ask my honourable colleague from her perspective as a parent, a mother, and as a teacher. Because when I talk to young people in this pandemic, there is a seismic shift happening. The difference between the millennials, who are being, I think, economically seriously crushed at this time, down to Generation Z. The world will be changed by Generation Z. They're not having it. They get that we have a pandemic that's upended everything, but for them the crisis is environmental. They see a world that's in serious, serious crisis, and we need voices. And so I want to ask, as a parent, as a teacher, how you think that we can use this Parliament to start engaging young people and making them believe we can actually make a better world rather than just accept the same old, same old, same old.
The Honourable Member for Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that also very important question. And certainly, as a Green Party member, the environment is top of mind. It's the lens that I use, with all policy, with all questions, including social justice. It's all connected. So for me, it's a critical component of our recovery plan, of moving forward. But I would say that I believe that the youth are already fired up. They're already active and engaged, and that's something that kind of fuels me and gives me the energy that I need to do my work in this House. So my advice would be for youth is to keep that up. Don't lose your optimism. Don't lose your hope. The solutions are out there, and you are the leaders of today. It's not the leaders of tomorrow. Those voices are so critical to the work that we do to inspire us and to guide us. And so, as parliamentarians, I think it is our responsibility to be role models and to bring truth to this House, to not be divisive, to not get too bogged down in the weeds of what perhaps our personal ideologies may be, but be here to do the work that we were sent here to do by our electorate. And so, I'm going to talk about environmental issues, and it's not just because I'm a Green, it's because I'm a Canadian, it's because I'm a mother, it's because I'm a teacher, and those things are so important to me. So on the East Coast, we've seen some different weather patterns. We've seen some changes. We've seen some of the hottest days on record in our communities. So people are very aware of these impacts. But it's just a matter, I think, of empowering them to continue to do that work, continue to be active, and continue to demonstrate, however they may feel important to do that. So social media is a great venue for that as well. So thank you so much for that question.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to pick up on the member's comments in regards to teaching and kids getting back to school. We often talk about essential workers. And, the light is really starting to flash and shine on our teachers. There's a big, huge issue that's before all of us in our communities as children are looking at going back to school. And it's something in which, we sometimes take for granted. But throughout this whole process, there have been some outstanding Canadians in all different sectors. I can think of whether it's the long-haul truck driver, the healthcare worker, the person that works in the grocery store. These people are really stepping up and assisting us getting through the pandemic. And now we're going into a different phase where we're reopening the economy, and schools are looking to reopen. And the teacher is going to be playing a very important role in this, Mr. Speaker. And my question to the member is can she provide her thoughts in terms of just to the degree in which the teacher and the role of the teacher for the student? Imagine a student walking into the classroom and that environment has really changed from the last time they were in the classroom. And if she could just provide her thoughts on that particular issue, and maybe, as I have done, just recognize the important work that all Canadians, not just governments, that are getting us through this, it's Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that question. And you know, as a former teacher, this is an incredibly important time. It's something we've never seen before. And I think that initially teachers were looking for ways to engage. They wanted to be able to help more, but because of the restrictions and all of the measures to keep us safe, they weren't necessarily able to do that. So with the time that has passed, I think that our teachers are really ready to get back into that classroom. We enjoy our summer breaks as best we can, but we always have that feeling in September we can't wait to get back to our students and the children that mean so much to us. So they've been ready for months and months now. So I really feel that they're going to take the bull by the horns on this. They're really going to take the initiative and do what needs to be done to keep our children safe, to keep themselves safe, to keep our staff safe, and also keep everyone's kind of level of well-being in check, because that's what's really important to me about kids returning to school right now, outside of curriculum and the necessary things to move through their grades. But it's that well-being, it's that social aspect. It's about being with other people besides their family bubbles that they've been stuck in for the last 5 months. So I do believe that teachers are well suited to do this, and as I said, they've been just kind of waiting to get involved and have their turn to serve citizens in this pandemic. So I'm just so excited to see what they will do with this. I think that really when you throw a curveball, I think that our education systems respond very well, and I'm so proud of the education system in New Brunswick in particular. And I do note that we obviously we fared quite well during the pandemic, and that we don't face as much uncertainty as some of the other jurisdictions in Canada. So I wish them well. I hope that we go slow. I hope that we're cautious and as safe as we need to be. But I'm so thankful for kids to go back to school, and I hope that I can support teachers within my riding to do that as safely and enjoyably as possible. Thank you.
Questions and comments? We have time for a very short question, 45 seconds. The honourable member for Edmonton-Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for her comments. I also am a teacher by training and also have children that I have spent an awful lot of time with over the last several months. One of the questions that I had is, going forward, looking at how we support provinces and how we support the education system, do you or would the member feel that it would be appropriate to ensure that we do have minimum standards, that we do have minimum things put in place to make sure that Canadian children are protected in childcare and school settings across the country equally? So somebody in any part of our country is making sure that we are making sure that they're getting the exact same support.
Honourable member for Fredericton, in 30 seconds or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague. And I didn't know you had a teacher training background, but I should have guessed, because we align on many things. I think that it's going to be different across jurisdictions, as I mentioned, and I'm a big fan of national standards. I think that no matter where you are in Canada, you should be able to receive the same best practices that we're seeing in other provinces or territories. I do have faith in our provincial systems, and I feel it is our job is to protect them and to support them, and so I hope that they are able to monitor and to ensure that they are reaching the same standards as other jurisdictions, but we don't necessarily have those standards yet, so I would certainly be supportive of seeing those happen in Canada. Thank you.